This program was produced by and first broadcast on Radio Kidnappers, a community access media station. Thanks to New Zealand On Air for making this type of programming possible.
You're listening to Radio Kidnappers, the voice of Hawke's Bay. This is a program called Community Corner, where we interview people, interesting people from our community, and today it's no exception. It's our pleasure to have on the phone Mary O'Neill, who is a collector of dolls. How are you going, Mary?
I'm very good, thanks. How are you, Ken?
Oh, I'm very good, thank you. And you're surviving well in your bubble in these troubling times?
Yes, I'm safe and well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Now, Mary, it's obvious that you're not a young person. Well, you're younger than me, but you're not a child or a teenager, and you collect dolls. And I just wonder, Mary, that most people, I might suggest, grow out of their dolls. You haven't. What inspires you to collect dolls, Mary?
When I was a child, I used to have many dolls and much love for them. My parents used to travel Europe for their annual holiday, and my mother would buy me a big doll in every country she visited. But above all, I was Mr. Spock, with sharp top ears, riding my spaceship in the attic of my house. I had a plunger as a manual. The whole big attic was my spaceship, and I had a lot of spaceship accessories. I was surrounded with them in my attic. When I grew up, I forgot all about that, and I enrolled in archaeology at the university in Europe. I arrived in New Zealand in 1998. The op shops are a New Zealand thing. 18 years ago, I went with my friends to op shops looking for entertainment. The lady in the Salvation Army op shop threw 2 antique dolls in the rubbish bin next to her counter. Nobody wanted them. I could see their heads showing up in the rubbish bin. I said to her, please take my donation of $20 for each doll in the rubbish bin. The lady was surprised. Are you sure you would like to do that? This is really kind. I said, yes, please. I also said to her, I feel obliged to tell you that those 2 dolls, after I restore them in some parts, would be worth much more. She said, I'm fine with that. 18 years on, I have collected over 15,000 dolls. A Google counter shows that Mary O'Neill Doll Museum Blogspot News reached a few hundred less than 100,000 unique visitors in a period of 11 years. I consider this as a success. This is how it all started. You asked me also what inspired me to collect dolls on a larger scale. What really inspired me was my initial research on the first 2 dolls I rescued. Consequently, I continued my research on them and other dolls. I started my own Mary O'Neill Doll Museum online. I believe if I say a few words, what I do and how I do, it would give a picture to our listeners what Mary O'Neill Doll Museum online actually does. Mary O'Neill Doll Museum collects, researches, displays, and interprets doll histories, items that are of cultural significance to New Zealand. Museum Aotearoa delivered a strategy for the museum sector in New Zealand. Accordingly, the Service of Museum and Art Galleries in New Zealand are well positioned to play a dynamic role in our national cultural life as centers of excellence where people can learn, experience, and enjoy and be stimulated to think about their place in the world. In line with the New Zealand National Strategy, Mary O'Neill Doll Museum online services meet those contemporary standards, helping New Zealanders to recognize their identity. I will talk, as you invited me in next time, more about that. To wrap up my answer to your question, all doll items were found in New Zealand and belong to those were the days, time, when children of different generations love them and play with them. Moreover, they have become a part of New Zealand history. It seems obvious that the target market here is nationally orientated. This also means that Mary O'Neill Doll Museum information is valuable to them. This is where my inspiration is coming from.
Wow, I'm impressed, Mary. I mean, I know my wife has 1 doll from her childhood. You've got 15,000 dolls. Where do you put them all?
Well, I told them they are in the storage.
Good on you. And 100,000 unique visitors to your website. That must be encouraging for you.
Yes, most definitely is. Yeah, I feel I feel very confident that information I offered is overwhelmed.
Now, you've obviously got an eye for what makes a doll collectible. I mean, that's why you rescued those dolls in the first place from the Salvation Army op shop. But what actually makes a doll collectible, Mary? And are there many collectors around in Hawke's Bay or in New Zealand?
Yes, there are. Any doll that you can collect can be called collectible. However, the term typically applies to dolls that are not contemporary. I believe it is not so simple to define collectible item in a short definition. To answer your question, what makes doll collectible, I would like to reflect on Cox and his colleagues. In 1998, they discussed the museum's nature and agrees with McLean 1994 that museum's product may represent different things to different people, including the experience created by objects, a particular item in the collection, and social acceptance. For that reason, people's doll collections come down to personal likings. This means that people may collect New Zealand pedigree dolls or Maori dolls or Cabbage Patch dolls only. In general terms, collectible dolls are dolls with a big brand name. For example, Armand Marcel, SFBJ, Pedigree, Ideal Toy Company, who made a famous Patty Blake Powell doll, Shirley Temple dolls. There is a long list of them. To answer your question, are there many collectors like myself? Yes, there are many doll collectors in New Zealand. Here in the Hawke's Bay, I had the pleasure to meet one lady from Clive, one from Hamoana, and one from Taradale. They were all in their 80s when I met them, and they were not only collecting dolls, but they were making them.
I wonder, how do you know a doll is valuable? I mean, I might suggest that anything old is valuable, but that's not the case, is it?
Well, yes and no. Dolls need to be examined to determine its value. I mean, properly examined. All the letters and symbols and body feature are equally important. The stamp doll markings determine an original item. The doll markings are usually stamped on the back of the head, shoulder plate, torso, or feet. This has great impact on a doll value. The rare doll with markings is damaged. It still has value, but not as great value as the same item without damage would have. If we're talking about dolls older than 100 years, some sign of aging are inevitable and therefore does not make a great impact on the price of dolls.
What if I had an old doll and I said, okay, wow, it's got to be worth some money. Who would I take it to get it valued? Could I come to you and get it valued?
Well, I personally do not have expertise to value them. If we talk about online doll valuer, for example, Ruby Lane or Dunbar Sloan, they are good to estimate the price of rare doll. But there are discrepancies in monetary value between them, between their opinions expressed. We also need to be aware that opinions expressed by those valuers or any other valuers are always their own. Preferably, I would use the comparative sale estimates published in specialized books to find out about doll value. Antique price guides are good, for example, Miller's. However, I personally use specialized doll price book based on research how much people were prepared to pay for them and how much they are sold for. There are certain payment our listener need to be prepared to pay, for example, to eBay to access information, what is doll sold for on eBay, and this would assist them to value their own dolls.
Now, you've got $15,000 of your own. I guess that some of them are quite valuable. But what's the rarest, most expensive doll that you've come across in your time with dolls, Mary?
I have a large number of composition dolls made at the end of 19th century until 1940s. Those are mainly German, Armand Marcel, composition dolls, French, Le Bébé, SFBJ. I paid 1,800 New Zealand dollars for one doll. Today you can expect to pay for that doll at least $3,000 or more.
That was a good find.
This is probably the most expensive doll in my collection. In the early 1940s, hard plastic started to substitute composition dolls. I also collected a large number of New Zealand hard plastic walkie-talkie pedigree dolls from 1950s. Those dolls were very costly too. This year, I bought 2 German Arm & Marcel composition dolls worth $600 and 1 Japanese Morimura Brothers composition doll worth 750 New Zealand dollars. And that was not expensive. All 3 are dolls from 1920s. In the expensive range were Petty Play Pal. I have 4 of them. In a good condition, one is worth 1,500 New Zealand dollars.
Wow.
I paid less than that. I think they were most expensive at the time, Petty Play Pal dolls. The rarest doll are usually the oldest doll in one collection and not necessarily a limited edition doll. My oldest doll is dated in the 19th century. Few figures are older. The oldest doll in one museum you would certainly not expect to be made of material dolls are made of today. If we talk about 19th century, mid-1800s in particular, Victorian wooden dolls would be relatively common specimen for one doll museum. Here I think about peg dolls.
Mm-hmm.
From this era, I have provided for Mary O'Neill Doll Museum frozen Charlotte type of doll made in 1800s. It's a tiny, low-quality porcelain figurine. Doll accessories are part of the doll story. Therefore, I provided a rare doll pram, which antique dealers brought to New Zealand from the United Kingdom 3 years ago. This doll pram is from the time Queen Victoria was a child or several decades later. When we are talking about dolls, we need to consider that the dolls can be any object children play with. In April 2010, I talked to Tirohia Bridger, who worked at the radio Kahanunu, Irirangionati Kahanunu in Hastings. I asked Tirohia, did you like to play with dolls in your childhood? Tirohia answered, my doll was Bethy, and I'm not sure what my sister Dolly was, but they were just like wooden sticks. Mm. The full article you can find online, or you can try at the Hastings Library. They still have a copy of my magazine named Hooks by Doll and Toy Chronicle. I published only one edition of this magazine in 2010. If we carefully consider what Tirohia has said to us, it is logical that her wooden sticks qualify as dolls, even if may not seem they are. Mm. After my interview with Mrs. Bridger, her wooden sticks have become a part of New Zealand doll history. If they survived until present day, would be very rare. I also would like to say when we consider the age of one doll, we may include figures. The beginning of making doll-looking objects relating to figurines with religious involvement. I provided for Mary O'Neill Doll Museum a good replica of an ancient Egypt Ushapti figure, which is waiting for me to collect after the COVID-19 lockdown. I'm talking about a limestone figure of an uncertain age. However, it has not been dated yet, but it is likely to be the beginning of the last century or older. In this case, it would be a rare figure find. Let's say a few words about this figure. The ancient Egyptian figure called Ushapti figure were found in tombs in the New Kingdom. Those figures were shaped as mummies, figurines about 3 to 30 centimeters long. They were made from various materials, usually stone, clay, or terracotta. One might think correctly, these are the sizes of a child doll. Most indeed they are, but Ushapti figure were not playing things. They are used to resemble the term. For that reason, Ushapti are related to the afterlife, religion of ancient Egypt in general. Their names were derived from WSB, which stands for answer. Encyclopedia Britannica offered an alternative spelling for the Ushapti figures. Accordingly, there are 3 spellings: Ushapti, Shapti, and sort of, I'm not sure how to pronounce, Shawbty. The word Ushapti translates as an answerer. They answer to deceased person prayers. We don't know. Nonetheless, this is an interpretation offered by the National Museum Liverpool. In the words of curator Ashley, Shabbats are small figures that were thought to magically come to life to serve the ancient Egyptians in the afterlife. I hope this answers your question, what is the oldest figure in my museum? Now I would like to make just a quick comparison. Ken, have you heard about the Daruma dolls?
Never.
If I may just add some thoughts for people to make a better sense of Egyptian figures. This is the way I like to guide our listeners to understand better this topic. So it has become apparent that Ushabti figures link to prosperity in the afterlife. Similarly, the Japanese Zen Buddhist dolls our listeners have probably heard of are called the Ruma, associated with prosperity in life. I have them in the Mary O'Neill Doll Museum Japanese doll collection. In more detail, they are also called wish dolls and are sold with a circled space for eyes. The person thinking intensively about their wish, painting the right eye with a blank while they're painting the right eye with a blank ink. The Ruma is burned by priests in Japan. And that's usually after the New Year. The Ruma is believed to have a magic power in a time of 1 year. After 1 year, a new Ruma doll can be purchased and the whole process repeated. What do Ushabti and the Ruma doll have in common? What do they actually do? In my opinion, there is a similarity between those two. Both of them have the ultimate goal target. Ushabti asks for prosperity in afterlife. The Ruma asks for prosperity in a human lifespan. In my view, both Ushabti and the Ruma seem to be an auspicious doll-looking objects, conducive to success in different ways. There is also similarity between the look of pedal dolls found in Egyptian tombs and Japanese pedal-looking dolls. We will be talking about them some other time.
Oh, it's fascinating. What if you've got a rare doll, though, Mary, and you damage it? I mean, I can appreciate that that might affect the value, but can it be repaired locally, or does it have to go somewhere, maybe overseas, to be repaired?
As far as I know, there was a doll hospital in Auckland. Mm-hmm. I do not have their address, but there is certainly New Zealand Doll Federation that may be able to help in some ways. Other than that, I do not have information about Doll Hospital in New Zealand in particular. There is a one in Sydney. Mm.
And I wonder if, Mary, if you could give people some tips about how they can look after their rare dolls, and particularly, I suppose, their clothing or their accessories, because, I suppose you think, a doll's got a dress on, but I suppose the doll could be eaten by moths.
To answer your question, I was to say that about regarding those hospitals, generally repair affect doll value. It is better to leave doll authentic where possible. However, the problem on a doll should be stabilized, for example, broken strings. Mm. Rare older composition dolls crack very easy because cold or heat or moisture. It can be repaired. Acrylic paint is used to touch up the damaged parts and even surface. I personally never paint them. I leave them as they are. You have to be very careful with composition dolls. I read in the book, I read in the book a couple of days ago that collectors used to apply sewing machine oil on the composition doll eyes, which improved the look initially, but causes damage as oil dries. Be aware that the composition doll absorbs oil and waxes. And also another important thing, that ripped, broken original clothes are worth more than a new. Mm. Always keep in mind that you're fixing a part that is damaged, not remaking a doll. So I'm not a doll hospital expert, but that's what I could have just think of at this moment. Mm-hmm. To answer your question about the tips that I can give to people to help them to look after their dolls and accessories, the doll that is in mint and original box has not been previously opened is ultimately top price. Doll maintenance is important. Open the box, check the doll, store in a dry place. Composition dolls are affected by temperature changes and direct sunlight. Keep them in a glass cabinet. Celluloid dolls are very easy to break. Keep them from direct heat. You will be amazed with the results if you take the doll dress made of silky, glossy black fabric, such as black taffeta, and wash in a strong tea. It does not have antibacterial properties, and it is for this type of fabric only. The golden rule is to keep dolls dust-free. Generated dust over the period of years breaks the fabric down. Pour porcelain can be cleaned with warm, soapy water. This applies to hard plastic dolls too. Sunlight would fade the fabric. And one more thing, metal dolls require constant temperature. Therefore, it is essential to monitor temperature, humidity, where you store or display your collections.
Good on you, Mary. Thanks for talking to us on our Community Corner. Now, what our listeners what they would like to know, of course, is you're going to come back with your own new program all about dolls. But in the meantime, if anyone wants to contact you for some advice about their dolls, how do they do that?
Yes, certainly. Our listeners are welcome to send me an email on my address, all lowercase, mary.o'neill@slingshot.co.nz, or call me on 022-034-1364. Stay safe and well, Ken.
Good on you, Mary. I'll talk to you next time.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
This program was produced by and first broadcast on Radio Kidnappers, a community access media station. Thanks to New Zealand On Air for making this type of programming possible.